So yeah, the difference with last week with chipping much closer to the green, 25% air time, roughly 75% roll as a general rule of thumb. Using a much straighter face club, a lot less can go wrong. More about the contacts, more about the speed. Pitching, we start to come further away from the green here. We're about 30 meters away from those flags there. More air time, less roll, 75% air time, 25% roll is a rough guide. The club of choice is then going to differ, because to get that height we need more loft, right? So anything from above, I'd say 54 and above. 52 is probably a little bit low on the loft side for a pitch, because you're not going to quite get the loft, which gives us the spin and the control. So 54, 56, 58, 60, you may have a favoured club within that area that suits you, the sort of go-to pitching club. Anything less than that, again, it might not give you the height and the stop that we'd be looking for. So that would be it in terms of the club of choice. And we're looking for control in this shot. It does take a lot more skill than what we did last week, so a lot more practice, a bit more precision, but yeah, a lot more skill in terms of this particular shot. So let's just talk about spin for a moment. And how do we create spin?
Hitting the ball cleanly.
Downward.
Yep, so good clean contact. Yep, how we approach the ball. How else? What other things do we need? Speed, yep, yep.
Well, you need a clean club.
Clean club, absolutely. Yeah.
Maximise the time on the face so it can get the spin.
Yeah.
Like, so more loft.
More loft,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful, yeah. More loft, speed, nice clean club, a nice soft ball, some of these three-piece balls, being nice greens, nice receptive greens, all these things are going to help you create spin. But yeah, just talking about the clean clubs there, Phil, is, yeah, big one, and a lot of people don't often bother with that, but if you get grass caught between club and ball, then you're not going to get that friction. You're going to get the ball just shooting off a bit like a flyer. So when you're in the rough, for example, when the balls fly off through the green, it's because you're not getting that friction, you're not getting that spin. So clean clubs, nice clean grooves. And again, the grooves are there to disperse rubbish and disperse dirt. If you're on a dewy morning, they're there to try and disperse some water. Again, a dewy morning, great example. If you're doing some little practice swings before, great to get a feel of the turf, but then give your club a wipe and a dry before you hit that pitch shot in the morning, because you can get a better chance of some spin. So yes, clean clubs, all those ingredients help to create the spin, but I'm going to speak to the technique that you need to help facilitate that as well. So I've got my 54-degree wedge here. Now this is my go-to wedge for pitch shots. I feel really comfortable with this. It's got a nice bounce. And just speaking of bounce, another really important concept and topic to go through before we get into this. Bounce, can anyone tell me what bounce is?
Use it, as in that's the width of the base of the club.
Yeah, pretty much. So the difference between the trailing edge and the trailing edge and the leading edge there, that gap there, or that angle, is measured in degrees. That's your bounce, and you want to use that with pitching, because that's your friend. Think of it like a plane coming in to land on a runway. If a plane comes in, lands on the runway, and then takes off all in one motion, if you imagine that being a wedge, whereabouts on the runway would you want the golf ball? Where the plane lands? In the middle, or where the plane takes off? Yeah. Any other thoughts? So basically, anyway, a bit of a trick question. So if you're using the bounce correctly, you could literally have the ball anywhere on that runway and still make good contact. If I was to, let's say, be coming in super steep like this with your pitch shot, you're going to get the leading edge coming at the ball, and if you don't get the precise strike, you're going to either fat it, or you're going to thin it, or you get that nice perfect strike when you get the timing correct. Some players play like that and they do quite well with it if you've got really good low point control and you're super precise with your skills. But for most of us, myself included, if we can use the bounce more, and that means coming into impact a little bit more with a straighter face, or sorry, a more neutral shaft, then you're going to use that bounce more, so you become more in this sort of impact position rather than that. So you can see the difference with how that's interacting. So using the bounce will allow you to, not that you're trying to hit behind the ball, but if you don't quite get it precise, you can get away with it, because it creates this longer flat spot where you can gather the ball and then come up again. If you're doing it like this, you're going to have it exactly where the plane lands. So yeah, just I think an important topic to note, because a lot of players will tend to get it really on the back foot and really get that sort of action going. You won't quite get the loft. You might get a little bit of check laid on, but you're going to come out quite low. You won't get the height and the spin and the predictable strike. So let's speak into the technique. So that's the goal, trying to use the bounce more, trying to get a little bit more neutral with the shaft. In level 3 we talk about flighting it in different heights, high, low, etc. But we're just going to talk about the general technique, and then today I'm going to talk about distance control. Level 2 we're going to just upskill a little bit on that. So general technique, you guys might be familiar with this, but we'll go through it anyway. So last week for your chipping we had the club pretty much, you know, that sort of width from our heels. This week we're going to be slightly wider depending on the length of shot. So this is about a 30-meter pitch shot to that yellow cone there. So slightly wider, and again slightly longer pitches. So the back flag there, you might need to go slightly wider. So just alter that as you need to. But this would be my general pitching stance. Left foot again is flared out, or the lead foot's flared out because it's not a huge swing. So that just facilitates an easier rotation through the ball. So that setup's pretty much the same, just slightly wider than last week. Yes, slightly. I'd go more 55, 45, favouring the lead side. I won't go crazy on that side, just ever so slightly.
Mostly on the left.
Yeah, about 60-70% on the left. Yep. So I go about 55% on the left, not too much, because again we don't want to be hitting too down on this shot. Yep. Ball position, I would be favouring more just below your sternum. So that might be just ahead of centre relative to your heels, given that your weight's slightly forward. So the ball position is going to be pretty much just below your sternum. It's not going to be too far back here. It's not going to be too far forward for your stock pitch shot. Distance from the ball last week obviously was very close to it. Very much more upright, holding down on the handle. This week we're going to step that a little bit further away, kind of in between what we did last week and a full swing. So you kind of be this kind of happy medium, and you can again hold down slightly on the grip to give you that better feel. This is also an option for distance control, which we won't go in depth into today, but just in general, holding that a little bit further, maybe an inch or so from the top, can give you that little bit better feel of the club. So with that setup there, basically the swing is just going to include, as I think it was Phil who mentioned using more arms, it's basically going to be a longer swing. So now last week was very much just here to here, a little bit more shoulders and arms. Now we're going to use a little bit more body rotation as well as the arms, and notice how I'm starting to hinge the wrists a little bit now as well, creating this kind of L shape and through. It's here. Last week was very much there. So that's the difference between chipping and pitching. And as I'm doing that, just notice how I'm just getting that club to bounce on the turf. You can hear that just skipping into the turf. I'm not getting diggy. You can see these shots I hit earlier. There's not much of a divot there. It's just bruising the turf. That's the kind of goal. So as you're doing that, there's a huge element of skill to this, and this is that skill of your low point control. Can you control the low point of your arc? And you can get away with it to a degree, again, if you're using the bounce. If you've got the leading edge coming in, you're going to get those fat ones and so on. So that's the general technique, nice tempo. And what I would say about the speed of the swing, a big thing that I tend to see is longer back swings and then a bit of a deceleration through the shot. So you tend to see this now and again. It's a longer swing and then a bit of a deceleration through the shot. What would be a preference would be, and I got this off Butch Harmon, one of his tips, obviously Tiger Woods' old coach, is to maybe have a slightly shorter backswing for a stock shot, but adding in a little bit more acceleration through the shot so you're committed to it. And again, that speed helps create the spin, but it's also that commitment and acceleration through the shot. So it's here, and you're adding that bit of speed at the bottom there. So we'll just go to that yellow flag. So here, you can see that little bit of acceleration through there, and that's going to help you get that little bit of spin as well. So before distance control, what's the first thing we need? Just that. Need a solid strike to be predictable, because and there's a couple of ways to do distance control. I mean, you've got any ideas? What do you guys do currently to manage distances for pitching? Use a putter. Swing length.
Backswing and
Yeah, awesome. What other ways is there?
The wrists.
Yeah, that can affect the power maybe you deliver. Yeah. Any other options to manage different distances?
Or just speed.
clubs.
Speed. Yeah. Speed, so you got swing length, speed, different clubs. Yeah, what else?
Loft.
Face of the clock, but
Loft, different club. Face the clock, yeah.
8 till 4 or something like that.
Beautiful. We're going to speak into that a bit today. Yeah, so swing length, awesome. the last one really is kind of that I mentioned there. That's a bit more in depth, holding high or low on the club. Different length leader will give you different speeds. But the ones I'm going to speak to, two really, but the first one is Phil and Ian said, their swing length. Now the one that most people can relate to is the old clock face system. So Tiger's dad taught him that years ago. Imagining that your lead hand is the clock face, and if you was to say, I'm just going to think of 4 different numbers here. So you've got an 8 o'clock swing, lead arms 8 o'clock relative to the clock face, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. That's a metric that some people really like to use because they can almost see it as a practice in. So rehearsal swing, that's 8, that's 9, that's 10, and then that's 11. And you keep relatively the same tempo. If you keep the tempo relatively the same, those 4 swings should give you 4 different club speeds, which should give you 4 different distances in theory. Now that's why it's a system that I use. I really like that one. The other one is same thing, but you could think of it as a quarter swing, a half swing, a 3/4 swing, or a full swing. Or some might even say thigh, hands to thigh, hands to hip, hands to chest, or hands to shoulders. So all the same thing, and what's right for you will be right for you. So I'll show you my one here. So the 8 o'clock swing, my rehearsals, I'm just feeling this 8 o'clock back and through, same sort of tempo, and this should go relatively shorter, so that's more towards the red. Oh, I lipped out. And then I go 9 o'clock, which should pretty much take me roughly towards the yellow. So a couple of swings just to feel that distance. And then we go 9 o'clock, 9 and through. That's pretty good for distance there. And then we go, that back flag is going to be just past 10 o'clock. So a couple of rehearsals there, get a feel for that one. 10 o'clock. So you see that will start to get to that back flag. I'd take those 3. I'd take those 3. Up and down for par. They wouldn't be for birdies because I'd have hit my tee shot in the trees, so that'd have been a chip out. Now there's also in that, because I practiced that years ago when I was younger, there's also a huge element of feel and touch to that, and I think as Carl said speed, or was it Phil said speed? Yeah, so there's a huge element of that to it too. So also bring in that side as a metric to gauge, but also that feel. And if someone wants to volunteer, seeing as I think Carl said it, do you want to just come out here, set Carl not on the camera, but just out towards sort of there, just like from here to here, maybe there. How's your throwing? A bit closer. A bit closer. How's your throwing skills?
Look, not ideal.
I'm going to test him. You throw that back to me. Just, yeah, underarm. Yeah. And if you go back a bit further. Well, in fact, let's throw it like this. Let's throw it overarm. All right. And throw it back. I'm right to the sun. I can't see there. Go further back. And again. Awesome. You see, that's cool. You see what you've done there? Like 3 or 4 different distances. Would you think in technique or length of arm swing, or you're just being instinctive, right? But what was yeah, just throw it. But what was predictable there is your release. So you're a good thrower, like how you threw it was the same. So your strike was the same. So if you couldn't throw it in, like, don't know what's going to happen, right? The distance control's not going over there. Yeah, come on in, mate. That's awesome. Thanks. Good demo. Good. But what I'm getting at there is also bringing some of that into your golf game. So if your target's to that flag, as a kid, you just instinctively throw it to that flag and let it roll out. Like, you wouldn't think too much about it, right? So he's trying to bring that into it as well. It's the same with the distances. Let that length of swing and also the feel of that distance come into it as well. So it's not all technique, but that bit takes more practice. And the strike's got to come first, and that's why we always start with that. Because if your strike's not there, if you chunk it, it's not going to go as far. If you thin it, it's going to go through. The strike comes first, and then the speed.